వస్తున్నా.
మరి ఎన్ని సైడ్స్ కలిపితే స్క్వేర్ అయింది?
So the next question that you would have had is, how one price? And if you think about the frequency that is required, that is also going to change. Is that going to change from crop to crop, or is it also going to change from season to season? Let me give you an example. In summer, do you think you need to water the plants more or less? That's right, you have to water the plants more. Why exactly? Because more water is leaving through evaporation from those leaves, which is called what? Transpiration. So that's another word that you can remember so that you can talk to other people about it. So when you say, instead of saying this big line, right, evaporation from the leaves, you just say transpiration and they'll understand. So which means we are left with two more questions. So we look at the sources first. We have some very common sources. In India, the most common sources are wells, the most common thing that you would see. A normal, boring, mundane well. Yeah? You also have tube wells, very similar to wells except that you don't really have the traditional circle you can fall into, but there's a tube that's dug deep inside the earth and water starts coming out of that. So another thing you can have is a river. Of course, if you're really lucky to have a river around you, then you have a river as a source. You can also have a pond, which gets filled up through rain. Yeah. So if you have a pond or a river, great. Or you could take a huge river and then build a canal out of it. So you can have a canal as well. So you have wells, you have tube wells, you have ponds, rivers and canals. So these are the usual sources of irrigation for most of India. You don't have anything else. So most of the time you build a big dam to be able to build canals out of it and then supply water to a large amount of area, irrigate a large area of cultivable land. So we've answered almost all of the questions we tried to answer in this module. So the next question that you would have had is, how much water, how frequently? Now you know that this depends upon plant, differs from plant to plant, right? Which is why we had our Kharif and Rabi crops. Kharif crops require more water, for example rice. And if you think about the frequency that is required, that is also going to change. Is that going to change from crop to crop, or is it also going to change from season to season? Let me give you an example. In summer, do you think you need to water the plants more or less? That's right, you have to water the plants more. Why exactly? Because more water is leaving through evaporation from those leaves, which is called what? Transpiration. So that's another word that you can remember so that you can talk to other people about it. So when you say, instead of saying this big line, right, evaporation from the leaves, you can just say transpiration and they'll understand. So which means we are left with two more questions. So we look at the sources first. We have some very common sources. In India, the most common sources are wells, the most common thing that you would see. A normal, boring, mundane well. Yeah. You also have tube wells, very similar to wells except that you don't really have the traditional circle you can fall into, but there's a tube that's dug deep inside the earth and water starts coming out of that. So another thing you can have is a river. Of course, if you're really lucky to have a river around you, then you have a river as a source. You can also have a pond, which gets filled up through rain. Yeah. So if you have a pond or a river, great. Or you could take a huge river and then build a canal out of it. So you can have a canal as well. So you have wells, you have tube wells, you have ponds, rivers and canals. So these are the usual sources of irrigation for most of India. You don't have anything else. So most of the time you build a big dam to be able to build canals out of it and then supply water to a large amount of area, irrigate a large area of cultivable land. So we've answered almost all of the questions we tried to answer in this module.
అవునా?
ఉమ్. ఏంటమ్మా? అమ్మా చెప్పమ్మా.
చదువుకో.
So the last question I left with about are there different methods? Yes, there are. Traditional methods and modern or
కొంచెం
sophisticated methods.
మిరియాలు వేసి
So let's look at the
పాకు.
traditional ones first. Now,
ఏంటి పెద్ద నోరు దగ్గర ఏం
so what you
పెడుతున్నావు?
do is that you take water from the wells and pour it into this mold and allow it guide it to go towards wherever field you want it to go. So this is a very small scale thing. You could also use a chain pump, and as you can see, it does pretty much what exactly it claims to do using a chain pump. That's also a traditional method. You can use a Dekli or a Rahat, which is a lever system as well. But these pictures are pretty self-explanatory as to what they do. A lot more interesting are the modern methods, which you have definitely seen somewhere or the other because it's very difficult to miss. This first method called a sprinkler is very difficult to miss. You have a vertical pipe stuck to the ground and it's connected somewhere to a big pump, right? Or a large source of water. Then what happens is there's a lot of pressure. You open this tube out, right? Let this little thing out. It starts to sprinkle water like a fountain. Thereby it covers an area, right? Sometimes you can even make it rotate so that it's putting it out in all directions. So that's a sprinkler. Very, very efficient method to start setting. It's almost as if the plants are, you're simulating rain. As far as the crops go, you wouldn't know if it's raining. Because it's not like water is coming below, it's actually raining on top of it. Right? Now, if the water supply is very, very poor, it's very, you have to like really save water. It's a very interesting, sophisticated method. The second amongst our modern methods called the drip irrigation. Now, why is it called drip irrigation? Because you're trying to give water drop by drop. It's almost as if you're hand feeding a baby, right? Give a huge amount of chunk of food to a baby. The baby might just can't really handle all of it. Yeah, anyway, it's only going to eat one mouthful at a time. So what's the point? Is shoving all that water? It might even go waste. So drip irrigation actually supplies water just at the rate and speed at which the plants can assimilate it. They can eat it, right? So drip irrigation is very, very, very economical. So you have an entire system of pipes and tubes whereby each plant gets the right amount of water drop by drop by drop. So it's very economical, it's very efficient, and goes right to the root. These outlets are there right at the root. Now one of my friends has a dad who was an old IIT and he passed out long ago. And he has built a house where he reuses the water from his own, like their toilets and all of that. A lot of water that gets used right from bathing. All that water is not just into the drainage. So his house is not connected to the drainage at all. But he has a garden around his house, which he really, really likes. And what he does is that he's being an engineer and being a person who really likes engineering, a true engineer. What he's done is that he's taken all that water and recycled it behind the house so that it goes through a lot of layers, it gets purified. And then he's connected it to a huge set of pipes which constantly drip irrigate his garden. So especially for fruits and for gardens, this sort of a sprinkler or a drip mechanism is very, very efficient, especially if you have less water. Because in most cities today, in urban areas, water is it's a very scarce resource. So he has figured out a way to make it so that he doesn't waste so much water in order to be able to maintain a good garden. So he uses the water that he bathes in to go and water the plants as well. It was beautiful when I watched it because all of a sudden at a particular time you start seeing water dripping and all the plants are getting their supply of water.
ఇప్పటికైనా వీడియో పెట్టుకోవడం అయిపోయిందా? ఏంటమ్మా ఏం చేస్తున్నావు అసలు?
charge of a private firm that provides irrigation systems to farmers. Help her provide the most appropriate irrigation system to each of these farmers as per their requirements. This farmer does not want to have unnecessary weeds in his field. Set up the most appropriate irrigation system that will reduce the chances of bacterial and weed growth. That is correct. In drip irrigation, water is directly supplied close to the plant roots drop by drop. The area between plants thus remains dry to prevent weeds and bacterial growth. This farmer is poor and he does not have enough money to install an expensive irrigation system. Help him set up a cost-effective system for watering the farm.